The next thing I should probably add in is keeping my object from running off into space. So if you notice, like, I can go off into infinity, which, while funny, is probably not what I want to do. I probably want to contain that in some way. So I'm going to be adding in walls around the outside of my game. These are also going to be game objects, so let's give them some names. Let's see, left wall, right wall, top wall, and bottom wall. And I'm going to create those things in here, much like I did the creation of my object. I'm going to create left wall first. I'm going to create it at 0, probably make sure that I put this a little ways in. I'm going to make my walls 16 wide or thick, depending on how you look at it. So I'm going to put this 16 down on the Y before I get to it. And then I need to tell it the width and the height. Let's see, this one's going to be 16 wide, and if it's going from top to bottom, it's basically going to be this 400 tall, except that I'm already 16 down. So it's going to be, so I could put in the game height. Let's see, minus 32 to make up for the 16 at the top and the 16 at the bottom. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So it's a little bit from the bottom, a little bit from the top. Let's do the right wall next, because it's going to be very similar. Except that instead of 0, this is going to be the game width minus 16. I could actually put the number in here to do the calculation. I'm just doing it this way so that if I change my game width, this will automatically calculate it for me. And then I want to make this 16 wide as well. Or, sorry, make this so that it starts at 16 down on the Y. I want to make it 16 wide. And then I have to do the same sort of thing that I did here with the game height. So I'm going to do game height minus 32. All right, there we go. Now, eventually I'll have to deal with collisions and make them contain my little square, but we'll get to there. The top wall is a new game object. So where's this going to go? Well, it's going to start at 0, 0 because it's in the upper left. So that's the X and Y. The width is going to be the entire width of my game. And the game height is only going to be 16. Notice that I'm adding one line at a time and testing it, generally speaking. That's a good way to code, because then if you type 70 lines of code and you get an error, you know one of those 70 lines was wrong. But if you actually only write 1 or 2 lines, you know that whatever the error was in only one of those 2 lines. All right, now for the bottom wall. New game object. And now we can just do 0. We have to put it down at the bottom, so it's going to be your game height minus 16, because it's always the upper left of the square that we have to worry about. And then we need to know the width. So this is going to be the entire width of the screen again. And then the height is going to be 16 high. Beautiful. My beautiful white arena of walls that don't stop it. There's a built-in thing that I created where if an object is solid, it doesn't allow other objects to move inside of it. Basically what happens is that it's going to check to see if it's colliding, and if it does, and the object you're running into is solid, you move back to your previous position and you stop. So if you're curious where that's happening, in this update objects, I'm actually doing the calculation on the X and Y position. I try moving in that direction and then check to see if I collided with something. If I did, and it's solid, I move back. Regardless, it actually calls the collision event, so I'm actually calling collision events as I'm walking through my very not their walls, but if I want it to actually perform in a way that causes it to stop, I need to actually make it solid, the walls themselves solid. So let's go do that. Left wall dot solid equals true. So let's try running into the left wall. Oh, that's good. I can still run through the top, but at least that's a beginning. So now let's make all the other walls solid. Top wall dot solid equals true. Bottom wall dot solid equals true. Now you may notice that there's some spacing I'm using. So I'm moving my code over a little bit anytime I can go inside of a brace. So you especially notice this down in key press. So every time I go into a brace, I can go over a little bit. Oftentimes coders will use tabs to go over. This is to be able to look visually and see what code is inside of other code. This little piece of code, this key code equals left, only if this is a left will it run this piece of code. Otherwise it won't. If the key is coded, it'll go inside of here. However, if it's not, it won't. So this is a way for me to quickly tell which code is being affected by the statements around it. So let's go see if all our walls are solid. Yep. Yep. Yes, and the final wall. Excellent. Okay, that was exciting and all, but it would be nice if I actually was able to see something other than a box. So you can do a lot with boxes and rectangles, but I'm going to try and actually put an image into my game. I'm going to be using sprites that came from the Game Maker world. That's what a lot of this stuff down here is me loading those in. So let's take a look at some of the sprites that we have. So here I am in the sprites. Let's go ahead and use maybe this ghost picture here. Now if I look at the properties of this thing is an icon, which technically processing doesn't want to use. It probably wants something like a GIF or a PNG. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of image processing on this guy. There's a couple of things I recommend. You could use any of the basic editing things that are on your computer, so Paint for Windows, for example. You could also use a more powerful thing like Inkscape or GIMP or Photoshop or Illustrator if you happen to have those. I'm going to be using a free site online called Piskel, which allows you to do some basic animations, and it will export it as a GIF, which is what I need to do. So to begin with, let me go ahead and grab this sprite off of Piskel. So I'm going to create a sprite. In order to do this, I'm going to import it. I'm going to import it from an image. So I was going to grab this one, this white ghost. That looks okay. I'll import that. There we go. Basic ghost. So now I want to export it as a GIF. So now I have this ghost1.gif. There it is. In Open Processing, I can go to Files now and go and put it here. All right, now that I have this thing, I can try to actually refer to it. In processing itself, what you would do is you would write in the path to that particular file, which might include things like going up directories and whatnot. For example, if I was going to write the location of that, so I'm going to create a temporary variable that just keeps track of where it's located. So when I'm saving my base processing things, I might have to go up a directory. 2 dots means goes up one directory, so you could do a series of these if you need to go up multiple. go into the sprites folder, various, and ghost1.gif. So that might be an example of the location of one of these files if you're on a local computer. In my case, what I'm writing is the name right over here, ghost1.gif. But there's an extra thing that I have to do if I'm in open processing. I have to add this extra command which preloads the file. Ghost1.gif. Because of the way websites work, you have to actually preload any code or any images so that it loads everything in the website before you actually start running the game. Otherwise, it'll partially load your game and start running it without actually having all the images, and your images won't have all the right properties to it. If I want to now set the image, the sprite of my ghost, I'm going to set the sprite to be my ghost location. This does a couple things. It sets the sprite, and it also changes the width and height of my actual object so that it actually is properly sized. And now we have a ghost. Well, it is getting exciting.